They tell kids today they have everything, but nothing, not a single app or screen, can match what it meant to be a 60s kid. We grew up on hands slick with Fizzy's foam, wild troll hair between our fingers, the clang of a steel lunchbox, and the pure thrill of slipping barefoot down a backyard slip-and-slide, all before breakfast. Fizzy's outsold Kool-Aid in 1968, troll dolls arrived straight from Denmark's icy sheep pastures, and that glass Coke bottle in your hand? It weighed more than your tablet ever will. This is We Are 60s Kids, 20 Things That Made the Best Decade, and here's why our childhood will always leave modern childhoods in the dust. Ready to remember what everyone else forgot? Drop a Fizzy's tablet into a glass of water and the world changed right in your hands. The fizz started slow, then burst into a wild rush of bubbles, shooting up a cloud of foam that made your fingers sticky and your tongue tingle. You'd watch the tablet spin and dissolve, the water turning electric pink or grape purple, and for a few seconds, you felt like a mad scientist mixing up summer in your very own lab. Fizzies weren't about the taste, though you'd swear root beer was the best. It was the show that mattered. By 1968, Fizzies were everywhere, outselling Kool-Aid and doubling down on the thrill, until the day the sweetener ban yanked them from shelves and left a generation with nothing but memories of that quick magical fizz. On the living room rug, there was always a troll doll within reach. Their woolly hair, real Icelandic sheep's wool, wild and soft, begged to be twisted, braided, pulled straight up until it stood like a lightning rod. The bodies were just the right size for a pocket, with big round eyes and a smile you could trust, even if the patent number stamped on the back meant nothing to you then. Some kids swore trolls brought good luck, especially the ones with the brightest hair, and every trade at recess was a tiny negotiation in playground economics. Hidden under your pillow or tucked in a jacket, a transistor radio felt like a secret you could carry anywhere. The plastic case, cool and smooth, fit in your palm, and the tinny sound of the local station drifted out through a single tiny speaker. You'd turn the dial slow, hunting for the Beatles or a ball game, static crackling between songs. For the first time, music belonged to you, not just the grown-ups, and even if the battery died halfway through your favorite song, it felt like pure freedom. Lunchtime wasn't just about food, it was about the lunchbox. Metal, painted with the Jetsons or Batman, heavy enough to double as a shield or a drum, and loud enough to announce your arrival when you clanged it open on the cafeteria table. The embossed designs wore down with every year. The handle warmed in your grip, and inside, a matching thermos rattled around, sometimes leaking chocolate milk, but always promising home. That lunchbox was your badge, your billboard, and sometimes your best friend, until the day a dent or a scratch told the story of a year's worth of adventures. That's just how it was. Everything you touched in the 60s left a mark, and every mark became part of the story. Summer meant tearing across the yard, hose in hand, rolling out the slip and slide until it stretched like a bright yellow runway. You'd take a running leap, arms out, belly first, and the world turned into a blur of grass, water, and laughter. There were no soft landings, just a jolt and a squeal, sometimes a bruise, but nobody cared. The warnings on the box? Ignored. The only rule was, don't let the grown-ups try it, unless you wanted to see someone get stuck halfway. The smell of wet vinyl, the cold shock of water, and the rush of flying across the lawn, no video game has ever come close. When the sun baked the grass dry, nothing hit the spot like a glass bottle of Coke, straight from the fridge. Those bottles were heavy, thick as a brick, and the glass always felt icy cold in your hand. You'd pop the cap with a church key, no twist-offs back then, and listen for the hiss. City names stamped on the bottom turned every bottle into a tiny adventure. You'd compare with friends, who got Chicago, who got Tulsa, and sometimes trade, just to say you'd tasted soda from somewhere far away. The first sip was sharp, sweet, and bubbling, and if you finished it too fast, you'd get a brain freeze that lingered longer than the flavor. Inside, the kitchen turned into a bakery with the Easy Bake Oven. All it took was a 100-watt light bulb, a tiny pan, and a packet of cake mix. You'd slide the tray in, wait for that warm, sweet smell to fill the room, and watch the window glow orange. The cakes were barely bigger than a cookie and sometimes half-baked, but that didn't matter. It was your own creation, and if you were lucky, you got to lick the spoon. Boys wanted in too, even if they had to sneak a turn when no one was looking. Chatty Cathy was the queen of the toy shelf. Pull her string and she'd say, "I love you," or ask for a cookie, her voice as familiar as a Saturday morning cartoon. The magic was in the mystery. You never knew which phrase she'd say next. The ring on her back wore smooth from all the times you'd tug it, hoping for something new. She didn't just talk, she listened, at least in your mind, and every kid wanted to be the one she picked for her tea party. When the sun dipped low, families piled into the car and headed for the drive-in. You'd park facing the giant screen, roll down the window, and hang that metal speaker inside. The sound was tinny, sometimes scratchy, but it didn't matter. You'd watch double features in your pajamas, windows fogging up from popcorn breath and laughter. Kids snuck in under blankets, parents smuggled snacks, and nobody worried about bedtime. The movie might end late, but the memory stuck around long after the credits rolled. And if you wanted to feel like a real explorer, you'd spoon Tang powder into a glass of water, swirl it until it glowed orange, and take a sip that tasted like pure science fiction. Astronauts drank Tang, at least that's what every commercial promised, and for a moment, you weren't just a kid at the breakfast table. You were floating in space, dreaming big, and the world felt wide open. That's what being a 60s kid was all about: doing, tasting, building, and believing, all with your own two hands. Every kid on the block wanted a G.I. Joe, not just for the uniforms or the gear, but for the feel of the thing. The solid weight in your hand, the click of the joints, and that little scar on his cheek, just under the right eye. You'd twist his arms, bend his knees, and set him up for battle in the dirt, knowing no one else's soldier looked quite like yours. Hasbro made sure of it. That scar wasn't just a battle wound, it was the real deal. A secret mark that said this was the genuine article. And if you lost a boot or a helmet, no problem. Someone always had a spare in a shoebox, ready for a new mission. But the real gathering happened on Saturday mornings. The house would still be quiet, sun barely up, and you'd be camped out in front of the TV, cereal bowl in hand, waiting for the first cartoon to start. The Flintstones, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and, if you were lucky, the early episodes of Scooby-Doo. The colors popped brighter each year. By 1966, the whole lineup was in full color, and it felt like magic. Cartoons weren't just shows. They were an event, a kind of weekly meeting where every kid in America tuned in at the same time. You could count on the same commercials too: cereal mascots, toy ads, and those wild, fast-talking pitchmen promising the newest thing for your wish list. When the shows ended, families would haul out the slide projector. The click, the whir, the moment the room went dark and the wall lit up with giant pictures from vacations or birthdays. You'd groan at first, but then you'd spot yourself with a missing tooth or a wild haircut, and everyone would laugh. The smell of warm dust from the lamp, the shuffle of cardboard slide trays, those were the sounds of family, the proof that your stories mattered, even if you had to sit through Uncle Bob's camping trip again. And when you needed a break from the crowd, there was always the Etch A Sketch. 2 red knobs, a blank silver screen, and the endless challenge of drawing a circle that didn't look like a box. You'd twist and turn, listening to the soft scrape inside, knowing one wrong move and you'd have to shake it all away and start over. It was pure, stubborn creativity. No batteries, no do-overs, just you, your hands, and whatever you could dream up. That's how we built our world, together, in living rooms and backyards, with toys and shows and gadgets that left a mark you could feel. Kids today have their screens, but they'll never know what it meant to make something real with your own 2 hands. Color didn't just arrive, it exploded. One day you're watching Bonanza in black and white, the next you're sitting cross-legged, eyes wide, as the world on screen blooms into Technicolor. By 1972, color TVs had finally outsold their black and white cousins, and suddenly everything, cartoons, commercials, even the evening news, looked bigger, brighter, and impossibly alive. It was like someone threw open the window and let the whole rainbow in. Barbie was more than a doll. She was a passport to possibility. With that tiny waist, perfect flip hair, and a closet that seemed to go on forever, Barbie let you dream up any life you wanted. Astronaut, nurse, movie star, she could do it all, and so could you, at least in the living room. Every new outfit felt like a fresh start, and every playdate turned into a fashion show, runway built from couch cushions and imagination. Then came Woodstock, the festival that turned a muddy New York farm into the center of the universe for 3 days in August 1969. Nearly 500,000 people showed up, rain or shine, to hear Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and the Grateful Dead. Even if you only saw it on the news, you could feel the energy. It was loud, wild, and a little bit rebellious, a sign that the world was changing and music could bring everyone together, no matter how different they seemed. But nothing matched the jolt of seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964. 73 million people tuned in that night. The next day, every kid in school was humming, drumming, or pretending to strum a guitar. Haircuts changed, bands formed in garages, and for a moment, everyone wanted to be British, or at least look like it. The world got a little louder, a little more exciting, and a lot more connected. And then, the impossible happened. On July 20th, 1969, the whole family gathered around the TV, hearts pounding, as Neil Armstrong took that first step onto the moon. 650 million people watched, squinting at those grainy black and white images, listening as he said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." For a second, it felt like everyone on Earth was holding their breath together, and when he planted that flag, you knew anything was possible, even walking on the moon. But the moment that still echoes loudest came 6 years earlier, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood at the Lincoln Memorial and spoke of his dream. Kids watched, some not fully understanding but feeling the power in his words. "I have a dream," he said, and the world listened. That speech wasn't just history, it was hope, broadcast to living rooms across America. It made you believe in something bigger, something better. In those years, being a 60s kid meant witnessing more than just fads and toys. It meant seeing history unfold, right there in your own home. In 1969, 650 million people worldwide watched the Apollo 11 moon landing, a single event that united viewers across continents. Throughout this countdown, we've seen how everyday objects, like the more than 1-pound glass Coke bottle, the patented 1961 troll doll, and the 100-watt bulb-powered Easy Bake Oven, shaped daily life for 60s kids. These items weren't just toys or tools, they were the tactile threads tying a generation together. Yet some questions linger. The full impact of mass media on childhood development in the 60s is still being studied, and not all government documents about this era's pop culture have been declassified. What remains clear is that the physical, hands-on world of the 1960s offered an unmatched sensory experience. Today's digital childhood cannot replicate the shared rituals and textures that define the decade. The documented evidence proves, for those who grew up in the 60s, these 20 icons weren't just products, they were the foundation of a unique collective memory.